It all started on an ordinary evening, the kind of night that usually slips by unnoticed. But for Julia, this night would become the spark that unraveled the truth she never thought she'd hear. Julia had been with Marcus for 8 long years. They weren't married, but their lives were so entangled it felt like they already were. Marcus had 3 kids from his first marriage, and Julia had a teenage son of her own. Their blended family wasn't perfect, but somehow it worked. Together, they had built what Julia liked to call a comfortable, upper-middle-class bubble. A nice home, stable income, vacations every so often. On the surface, life was good. But comfort can sometimes hide cracks beneath the surface. And Julia was about to stumble into one of the deepest cracks of all. One chilly Thursday night, Julia checked the Ring camera by the front door. She wasn't snooping, she wasn't looking for trouble, it was just routine, the same way you might glance out a window before locking it. But instead of silence, she heard Marcus's voice drifting in from outside. He was pacing the porch, phone pressed to his ear. And though Julia knew it was wrong, she couldn't stop herself from listening. Something about his tone put her on edge, sharp and impatient, like a man unburdening himself. At first, she didn't catch the context. He was laughing softly, talking to one of his old friends, someone she didn't know well. But then, the words started cutting deeper. Marcus began sharing details about her son, private details she had explicitly asked him to keep between them. Julia froze, her stomach twisted. That wasn't his story to tell. Why was he painting her son's struggles like casual gossip for his buddy's amusement? Her chest tightened, but that wasn't the worst of it. The friend on the other end began asking Marcus about their relationship. Simple questions, maybe innocent, but Marcus's answers, they were knives. One question echoed louder than the rest. "Are you ever going to marry her?" Julia's breath caught, and then, as casually as if he were discussing the weather, Marcus replied, "No, I don't plan to." Her knees nearly gave out. 8 years. 8 years of building a life, blending families, planning for the future, reduced to a dismissive shrug. And then he twisted the blade further. Marcus implied that Julia was only with him because she knew too much about his finances, his inheritance, as though the love she had poured into their life together was nothing but a calculated grab for money. Julia felt the blood drain from her face. How could he say that? How could he lie like that when he'd been the one to push the idea of marriage so many times before? She had dreamed of being his wife, of finally walking down the aisle after years of waiting. He had promised her they'd talk about it soon, that it was only a matter of timing. And now, with one cruel confession, everything shattered. In her own living room, with only the quiet hum of the camera feed for company, Julia broke. His tongue, sharp and careless, felt like a blade slicing straight into her chest. She replayed the words in her mind over and over, each time cutting deeper. "No, I don't plan to." She knows too much. She's in it for the money. That night, sleep was impossible. She lay awake, staring at the ceiling, her heart pounding with betrayal. 8 years suddenly felt wasted. Every conversation they'd had about someday now tasted like poison. By morning, Julia knew she couldn't just let it go. She had to confront him. But how? How do you tell the person you love that you heard them casually dismantle your future together? She decided to ease into it. She wanted him to understand the weight of betrayal without immediately throwing down what she'd overheard. So she tried a different approach, a hypothetical. Sitting across from him at the kitchen table, Julia asked softly, "Marcus, if I broke your trust, say, if I cheated on you, how would that feel?" He blinked, startled. The question caught him off guard. She knew it wasn't the same, but it was the only parallel her broken heart could find. Trust shattered, love tainted, promises undone. Marcus's reaction, however, was not what she expected. His face hardened, suspicion sparking in his eyes. "Why are you asking me that? Are you saying you want to cheat?" Julia's heart sank. No, that wasn't the point. She wasn't confessing, she was pleading, trying to make him see. But instead of empathy, he turned defensive, twisting her words into something they were never meant to be. From that moment, the air between them grew thick with tension. Conversations became shorter, colder. Nights passed with silence, stretching endlessly between them. And Julia, once confident in their shared future, now felt adrift, betrayed, and utterly alone. She turned to the only place she thought might understand, an anonymous corner of the internet. On Reddit, she poured out her heart. She told strangers about the 8 years, the blended family, the life she thought she had. And she told them about the night the truth spilled out on a Ring camera. Responses flooded in, some gentle, some harsh, but nearly all of them said the same thing. This is a sign. He's not in it for the long haul. You can't trust him with your child's secrets, and you can't trust him with your future. Julia read those words with tears streaming down her face. Deep down, she knew they were right. But knowing and acting are never the same thing. Julia couldn't stop replaying the conversation in her mind. The betrayal cut so deep that every look Marcus gave her now seemed laced with hidden meaning. When he smiled, she wondered, was it genuine, or was he hiding something else? When he reached for her hand, she couldn't feel the warmth anymore. 8 years of love, laughter, struggles, and blended family life suddenly felt fragile, like glass that could shatter at the slightest touch. She thought back to the countless evenings when Marcus had told her, "One day, we'll make it official." They would sit on the back porch, sipping wine as the kids laughed inside, and he would lean over with that familiar grin. "One day, Jules, just wait." And she did wait, year after year, because she trusted him. But now the one day felt like a cruel trick, a dangling promise that was never meant to be kept. Her frustration began boiling over. She tried again to talk to Marcus, to explain what she had overheard, but every attempt ended in deflection. He accused her of twisting his words. He said she was being paranoid. He even dared to laugh, telling her she was too sensitive. Julia's anger turned into heartbreak. She didn't want to fight, she wanted to be heard. But Marcus wasn't giving her that. One night, sitting alone at the kitchen table, she wrote everything down on a piece of paper. The private detail he had shared about her son. The cold dismissal of marriage. The cruel insinuation that she was only with him for money. She stared at the paper until the words blurred through her tears. She had sacrificed so much for this relationship. She had built a home, created stability, and welcomed his 3 children as her own. She had swallowed her pride countless times, believing that compromise was part of love. And now, it felt like she had been compromising with someone who never intended to give her what she truly wanted. Commitment. Days stretched into weeks. The tension in the house was unbearable. Julia noticed Marcus spending more time away, always with vague excuses, just grabbing drinks with a buddy. Got caught up at work. Don't wait up. She wanted to trust him, but after hearing his betrayal with her own ears, how could she? The kids sensed it too. Her son grew quieter, noticing the way she forced a smile at dinner. Marcus's children asked fewer questions, as though they knew the house was balancing on a knife's edge. Finally, Julia realized she couldn't keep all of this bottled up. She confided in her best friend, Claire. They met at a small coffee shop on a rainy Saturday morning, the kind of place where secrets felt safe. Julia poured everything out, her voice trembling. Claire listened, eyes widening in disbelief. When Julia finally stopped, Claire reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "Jules, you can't ignore this. He's shown you who he really is." Julia wanted to argue, to defend Marcus, to cling to the hope that things could go back to how they were, but she couldn't. Not anymore. Her best friend's words echoed in her mind long after that meeting. "He's shown you who he really is." That night, Julia decided to test Marcus one more time. She needed to know without doubt where he stood. Over dinner, she asked directly, "Marcus, do you see marriage in our future?" He froze for a moment, then smirked. "Why are you so obsessed with a piece of paper?" He chuckled, shaking his head. "We already live like we're married. Isn't that enough for you?" Her heart plummeted. This wasn't the first time he had dodged, but now it felt like a wall slamming shut. There was no someday. There was no hidden plan. There was only his comfort and her sacrifice. Julia realized she wasn't just battling disappointment, she was battling gaslighting. Every time she brought up her pain, Marcus made her feel like she was imagining it. But she wasn't. She had heard his words. She had felt the knife of betrayal. In desperation, Julia posted an update to her story online. She explained how Marcus had flipped her hypothetical question against her, how he continued to dismiss her, how he refused to even acknowledge the idea of marriage anymore. The responses were overwhelming. Thousands of strangers offered advice, sympathy, and blunt truths. One comment stuck with her. "Imagine another 8 years like this. Will you be happy? Or will you regret every single day you stayed?" The thought chilled her. 8 more years of empty promises. 8 more years of raising kids in a house filled with unspoken resentment. 8 more years of waiting for a ring that would never come. Julia felt trapped between fear and freedom. Fear of letting go, fear of breaking apart the family they had built. But freedom whispered to her too, the freedom to demand honesty, the freedom to live without betrayal hanging over her head. The choice was becoming clearer, even if her heart wasn't ready to admit it. Julia lay awake most nights, staring at the ceiling. The steady rhythm of Marcus's breathing beside her should have been comforting, but instead it felt like a reminder of how far apart they truly were. She remembered when she used to feel safe in his arms. Now, lying next to him felt like sleeping beside a stranger. Every laugh, every affectionate word, every promise he had made over the years, suddenly they all seemed hollow. She had given 8 years of her life to this man, 8 years of trust, 8 years of believing in a future that clearly existed only in her imagination. Julia began noticing little things she had ignored before. The way Marcus always kept his phone face down on the counter, the sly smile when he texted late at night, the sudden trips out with friends that he never elaborated on. Each moment added weight to the sinking feeling in her chest. One night, after Marcus had left for yet another mysterious outing, Julia opened the Ring camera app again. She told herself she wasn't spying, she was seeking truth. But what she heard nearly shattered her. Marcus, standing on the porch, laughing with a friend on the phone. His voice was casual, carefree, and then he said the words Julia would never forget. "She's too dependent on me now. She won't leave. Why would she? She gets the house, the kids, the lifestyle. Marriage? Not happening. I'm not stupid." Julia's breath caught in her throat. She dropped her phone onto the couch, hands trembling. The betrayal wasn't just about marriage anymore. It was about the life she had built with him. A life he clearly believed was nothing more than a convenience for her. Tears blurred her vision, but anger burned hotter. Was that really how he saw her? As some desperate woman clinging to his money, his house, his children? The truth was unbearable. When Marcus returned that night, she couldn't even look at him. She retreated to the bedroom early, pulling the covers up to her chin as though they could shield her from reality. But reality had already sunk its claws in. The next day, Julia reached out to Claire again. They met at the same coffee shop, rain tapping softly against the windows. Julia's voice shook as she told her friend about the latest discovery. Claire's eyes hardened, her protective instinct rising. "Jules, this isn't love anymore. This is manipulation. He's not just lying to you, he's insulting you. He's keeping you exactly where he wants you." Julia swallowed hard, her throat aching. "I don't know if I can do it, Claire. We've built so much. What about the kids?" Claire leaned forward, her tone firm but gentle. "What about you? If you stay, what kind of example are you setting? That love means accepting betrayal, that commitment means waiting forever for someone who doesn't respect you." The words hit Julia like a tidal wave. She had been so focused on preserving the family unit that she hadn't considered what kind of message she was sending to her son, or to Marcus's children. That night, Julia tried to have one last honest conversation with Marcus. She sat him down at the kitchen table, heart pounding. "Marcus, I need you to hear me out. I know what you've been saying to your friends. I know how you really feel about marriage. And I can't live like this anymore. I need to know if you're willing to commit. Not someday. Not in theory. Now." Marcus stared at her, his expression unreadable. Then he laughed, actually laughed. "You're unbelievable, Julia. Snooping, eavesdropping, twisting everything I say. You've lost it." Her heart splintered. Even when confronted with the truth, he refused to take responsibility. She pushed back tears, but her voice was steady. "This isn't about me snooping. This is about you lying. This is about you stringing me along for 8 years." For the first time, Marcus's mask slipped. His smile faded. His eyes cold. "You want the truth? Fine. I never planned on marrying you. You're convenient, Julia. That's all." The silence that followed was deafening. Julia's world, already cracked, finally shattered. She stood slowly, her chair scraping against the floor. "I deserve better than this. And so do the kids." Marcus scoffed, rolling his eyes, but Julia didn't care. For the first time in years, she felt a spark of strength ignite inside her. She didn't know what came next, whether it meant leaving, rebuilding, or starting over completely. But she knew one thing with absolute certainty. She could no longer settle for a man who saw her as nothing more than convenient. The next morning, Julia woke with swollen eyes but a sharper mind. For the first time in months, she didn't feel paralyzed by doubt. She felt clarity. She moved quietly around the kitchen, packing lunches for the kids, her motions calm, almost mechanical. Marcus barely looked up from his phone as he drank his coffee. His indifference stung, but it also confirmed everything she already knew. By the time the children were off to school, Julia had already made her choice. She pulled out her laptop and opened a blank document. At the top, she typed 3 words: "My new life." It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't impulsive. It was deliberate. She began drafting a plan, finding a new place to live, consulting a lawyer, separating their finances. Step by step, she was building her escape route. When Claire called later that afternoon, Julia's voice carried a steadiness her friend hadn't heard in months. "I'm leaving, Claire. Not someday, soon. I've wasted too much time hoping he'd change. It's time to choose myself." Claire's relieved sigh nearly brought Julia to tears. "That's the strongest thing you've ever said, Jules. I'm proud of you." That evening, Julia confronted Marcus one final time. She waited until the kids were in their rooms, then faced him in the living room. I'm done, Marcus. I won't beg for love. I won't wait for a commitment that's never coming. I'm leaving." Marcus barely looked up from the TV. His dismissive shrug was the final confirmation she needed. "Do whatever you want. You'll come crawling back. You always do." But Julia only shook her head. Not this time. She turned, walked upstairs, and for the first night in years, she slept soundly, because the decision had already been made. Days turned into weeks, and slowly, Julia began piecing together her new life. There were moments of fear, moments of exhaustion, but also moments of freedom she hadn't felt in nearly a decade. She discovered laughter again, real, unguarded laughter, with her son. She rediscovered her passions, small hobbies she'd abandoned long ago. And each day the weight of Marcus's shadow grew lighter. She didn't hate him. In truth, she pitied him, too afraid of commitment, too blind to recognize the love he'd thrown away. But Julia was no longer chained to his choices. One evening, sitting on the porch as the sun set, her son leaned against her shoulder. "Mum, you seem happier now." Julia smiled, tears stinging her eyes, not from pain but from gratitude. "Yes, sweetheart, I am, and I promise from now on we'll always choose happiness." Julia's journey wasn't about losing Marcus. It was about finding herself again, her voice, her strength, her worth. And though the road ahead was uncertain, one truth was undeniable. She had survived heartbreak, betrayal, and disappointment, but she had gained something far more valuable: freedom. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, please give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends.